Today we have a crazy story of an entitled mother who took out a $50,000 loan in their kid's name without their knowledge. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, mother-in-law thinks she deserves to babysit her grandbabies. This is going to be a bit of a long one, but I need to vent this out because I am so annoyed and just infuriated, really. Let me start this off by saying that I'm a very happy 29-year-old female living with my husband Alex, 31, and 4 kids ages 7, 4, 2, and 1. My husband and I had pretty bad childhoods, but I have great contact with my parents, and when we still lived fairly near them, they would come and help out by cleaning the entire apartment and overall were amazing. Meanwhile, his family is absolutely insane. His father was in jail and his mom is just bat crap crazy. There's been so much insane drama with her that a few years ago, when we moved back to the UK from a different country, we went completely no contact with her. Alex has a sister and a brother. We don't talk with the brother but are really close to his sister. She lives in London and is also no contact with my mother-in-law. She recently graduated from uni and she loves our kids, so that's great. The last time we heard from mother-in-law was 2 years ago, which was when we moved, and since then, everything has been calm. Now, time skipped to just 3 weeks ago. I was recently looking through old photos and realized that Alex and I hadn't gone on a proper date in ages. Once every 2 months, we used to take a weekend trip to the beach, mountains, city, etc. before we had kids. And even after our first, we stuck to this tradition and took the baby with us. But after our second, we just didn't have the time anymore. We were busy. Plus, we live by the beach, so if we want a nice outing, we just take a 1-minute stroll there and call it a day. But looking at those photos really just brought back this nostalgia of time spent just the two of us. And after talking with Alex, we decided it would be nice to maybe take a weekend trip down to France the following week. I don't work and Alex has a flexible schedule. We had to move a few things around, but overall it wasn't that hard. His sister immediately agreed to come look after our children, and the kids are excited to see their aunt. I was a bit sad to leave the babies, but knew it would be good for our relationship to have some time just for ourselves. So we were all ready for our trip. It was Wednesday and we were set to go Friday evening. Alex was at work and I was home alone with the children when I heard the doorbell. I go and open the door, and there, standing with a smug grin on her face, is my mother-in-law. I was shocked to say the least because how on earth did she find out our address? She doesn't even live in the same country as us, and yet here she was. "Oh, is that the newest baby?" She pointed at my son, who I was holding. "I've never even met him." She practically pushed herself in and casually sat down in the living room while I tried to figure out what on earth to do. When I asked why she was here, she tried to avoid the topic and instead wanted to see the other kids and bond with them until Alex came home, but I wouldn't let her. It might sound rude of me, but as I said, she's done some incredibly toxic things in the past before and after I gave birth, so this was to protect our family. Finally, she dropped the sweet grandma mask and revealed the true reason she was here, to persuade me into letting her spend the weekend with her grandkids. She somehow found out that we were going to France and leaving the kids with my sister-in-law, and she wasn't having that. She began saying sister-in-law was irresponsible and young, she wouldn't manage taking care of 4 young children for 2 whole nights. Meanwhile, mother-in-law explained she was experienced after raising 3 children, so she would have no problem. Plus, she was already here. When I said no, she shifted her personality and became serious, which meant yelling at me and telling me she had the right to see her grandbabies and that she would call the police and demand grandparental rights. She claimed I was being abusive and neglectful for planning to leave my children alone for a whole weekend, that she'll call social services and more crap like that. I was getting tired and asked her to leave, but she said she won't and literally sat on the couch refusing to move. When I called Alex to come, he was not pleased and got into a heated argument with his mother, which resulted in her finally leaving. However, this whole thing is nuts because we cannot figure out how she found out our address or our weekend plans. Sister-in-law swears she didn't tell any relatives and only her colleagues plus roommates knew. As for mother-in-law, she didn't fully leave. I have no idea where she's staying at the moment, but we see her driving a rental car outside our house constantly, as if she's a surveillance officer. It's so ridiculous but scary at the same time because our older 2 kids are constantly playing outside in the garden without supervision. And while we obviously have a fence and security cameras, it's still a scary thought that she might try to snatch one of them, even though Alex assures me she wouldn't go that far. We ultimately canceled our trip due to the fear that she'd try to pull something while we were gone. We're still trying to figure out how she found us, and we're just waiting for her to do something that would let us get a restraining order against her. She's a scary woman for sure. Although it might not rise to the level of something clear-cut where you could start getting that restraining order, I would say it's not a bad idea to at least consider reporting this to like a non-emergency line and seeing if you can't at least start building some kind of written case. When I dealt with some, let's say, less than savory people in the past, I called the non-emergency line one time, and the sheriff I spoke to, one of the main pieces of advice he gave me was, if something similar happens like that again, call the non-emergency line, report it, and slowly build this record up, and eventually if stuff does happen enough, it will get to the point where you can get actionable. Me Folly commented, sister-in-law has to comb through every social media account and make sure there are no mentions anywhere of your trip. She has to talk to every one of those colleagues and roommates in detail and track down every single person that they may have mentioned it to. She should also contact HR to be certain no one has asked for her details. Meantime, you and your husband must do the same. Anyone husband had to talk with to move things around. Anyone at work, every neighbor and friend. Until you find out where the leak was, you won't be able to plug it. Chances are high that it was some innocent remark that reached the wrong ears. Those people need to know that, in your case, there is danger in the most innocent of information sharing. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy crazy stories of entitled parents, why not hit those like and subscribe buttons down below? That said, our next story is, my entitled mom attacks me and demands that I pay for my abuser's bail. My mother continues to be the bane of my existence. It's been about a month since I, 29-year-old female, last dealt with her and I'm once again facing my mom's delusions. The short background is my mother prefers my S.A.er stepbrother Chris. He's 43 now. He abused me since I was a child. Normal stuff that evolved into S.A. as I became a preteen and then a teen. After the worst happened, my paternal half-brother Sam took me in when I was 16 and raised me. It's also come to light that my mother was stealing from a trust my father had set for me with fake receipts, and she'd also been claiming me in her taxes, which is ridiculous since I do my own taxes as an independent. All in all, my mother is now being investigated for tax fraud. Chris is currently in jail for kidnapping his cousin's baby, a 2-year-old girl. Now to the newest stupidity that has come from my mother. She is now harassing me to pay Chris's bail. To begin with, I can't believe they would let him post bail at all after kidnapping a baby. The bail is set at $25,000. That seems like a lot, but in all honesty, I find it absolutely disturbing that's all they're charging. I've been trying to get a restraining order on both Chris and my mother. Chris, that one is more likely coming. My mother? Despite all her harassment, no one, neither cops nor lawyers, believe her to be a danger to me. So I still have to deal with my mother trying to talk to me at the parking lot of the clinic I work in. I'm a nurse practitioner, or at home, constantly banging on the door. Her sisters, who I met as an adult and didn't know they even existed to begin with, have also joined in on this. Sam and his wife say that it's okay, and not to worry, but I know this is taking a toll on them. I'm also worried about their kids. They have 2 boys, being exposed to all the crazy. So despite Sam's insistence that everything is okay, I would move temporarily to a hotel until I could find a cheap apartment to rent. Some people suggested becoming a traveling nurse, and while I'm considering it, I don't want to be far from Sam and his family, as they're my support system. The issue is my mother somehow tracked me to the first hotel I was in and found out my room number. She banged on the door while I was getting ready for work. When I opened the door to tell her to go away, she slapped me and began to hit and scratch at me, yelling it was my fault that her sweet boy was taken by the cops and that I should be the one paying his bail. My mom isn't that strong, but I was stunned at the sudden attack. By sheer luck, housekeeping was doing their rounds when this happened and they got security to restrain my mother. Security called the cops. They took my mom away but apparently let her go with just a warning. When I recovered enough, I ended my stay and booked into another hotel. I did go to work, mostly so I could get my injuries looked after. My boss heard this as she was helping me get through a panic attack and cleaning some scratches I had on my neck. After giving her full details, she told me she had a rental for extra income. At the moment, she has it rented for some college students, but when the semester ends, she's going to close it as a student rental and offered it to me. It's a small house with a yard that permits pets, so I can bring my cat with me. She also wants me to start carpooling with one of my coworkers, a male nurse that looks intimidating, but is the sweetest teddy bear you can imagine. I went to the cops to report my mother, and again, despite the pictures of my injuries, this was all brushed as a domestic affair since my mother is elderly and they don't think she's a real danger. I even got lectured about maybe needing family therapy. My lawyer just told me to take a deep breath and do the paper trail. He told me at the end of all of this, we'll have the last laugh. So here's hoping. As to how my mother found my room number, the girl at the front desk gave it to her when my mom made a scene about how I was thinking about ending things and she was worried I would do so after my fiance was taken by the cops on fake charges. Yeah, I think it's bull and my lawyer's already speaking to the hotel's management for that. My dear mother has also gone back to social media to claim I attacked her when she went to check on me after Sam kicked me out. Again, it's turned into a fight between my dad's family and her family. I posted pictures of my injuries and wrote my account of what happened. I'm just so tired at the moment. This is affecting my work, and while my boss is amazing and supportive, I can't imagine this is good for me. I miss Sam and his family. I miss my own bed. I miss my peace. I never wanted to deal with my mother or Chris after I left their roof. Honestly, I'm just stunned at how little the police are actually wanting to help out here. It sounds to me, it's not like they actually have any kind of real opinion on the situation. It sounds to me like they just want to do as little as possible. Like, I feel like they're just saying to themselves in their heads, that just sounds like a lot of paperwork, I'm not doing that. Lapsteel Guitar commented, assuming you have an attorney, have them start pressuring the proper people to take action. Sometimes you have to get to the right person, and while you might not know who it is, a lawyer would be able to find out pretty quickly and get things moving. Also, get an air horn, like foreboding. Next time she approaches you, blow it in her face. Our next story is, are my parents being too overcritical and crazy about my boyfriend? My parents and I just had a big conversation about my boyfriend and what they really think about him. For context, we've been dating for 1 year and we met at the same college. And I'm 1 year older and I just graduated and he's in his senior year of college. They've made snarky remarks in the past, which I ignored, but this conversation was the biggest one we had yet. If anyone fully reads this, thank you, I love you. This conversation started by me saying I'm going to visit him at college for the weekend because I haven't seen him in weeks due to busy schedules. I mentioned I'll sleep over for a couple of days, to which my mom made like a weird, confused face and laughed. I was like, what's so funny? To which she responded, it's ridiculous you're going back to the college you graduated at to visit your boyfriend and sleep in a dorm again for a few days. I'm sorry, but is that strange or something? Like, don't couples visit their partner at college during the weekends and sleep over? So what, I'm graduated. What's so odd about this? Then we basically got into a conversation where she started naming every aspect she doesn't like about him. I'm just gonna shortly list everything bullet by bullet so it's easier to read. First is the age gap. My mom said that because he's 1 year younger than me, he's so much younger than you. Like 1 year? Because of the age gap, he's not a man in her eyes and doesn't have the ability to take care of me, even though I feel like he absolutely takes care of me and is a gentleman. When he came over to my house, he's only ever been to my place twice. After eating dinner, if there was anything left over, he would ask if anyone was gonna eat it, and we all said no, so he would finish what's left, and in my mom's eyes, he was eating too much and being inconsiderate, even though it's a compliment to my mom's cooking. Parents criticized that he wouldn't talk a whole lot, but he's just the shy type and has only met my family twice 6 months apart, so I understand. Dad criticized that he didn't ask the right questions. For example, when we went to visit my grandparents, my boyfriend asked my grandparents how they met and how they like living in the county. They do, but my dad said those were stupid questions and instead should have asked something like, "Oh, how did you make this dinner?" Like, okay. I got sunburned at the beach because my boyfriend went swimming and I was sitting under the shade, but then decided to tan and put sunscreen on my own back, and I low-key fell asleep and got burnt, and my dad blamed it on him even though my boyfriend wasn't near me for like 30 minutes. I went to the beach again and stayed an hour later than I should have because I wasn't gonna see him for 4 weeks and just wanted to spend 1 extra hour with him. And then my mom texted me saying me coming home later than expected was his fault even though we both came in our own cars, meaning I have full control over when I leave, and also I'm a grown adult. Okay, so now I want to list some things that may fall into a gray area. When he came over to my house the second time, he was sitting on a wide couch where you can extend your legs. However, his toes were touching the side of the table. Again, not on top of the table at all, and my mom said because of that, he has absolutely no manners at all and has generalized him as that kind of person, calling him ill-mannered and entitled. And now that's how she views him. When we visited my grandparents, he was carrying flowers to give to my grandma as a thank you for having us, and I guess in the moment he forgot to come back to the car and help my dad and uncle with the suitcases. And my dad called him entitled for that, saying that he doesn't feel like he has to help, when honestly it was a genuine mistake because he was focused on surprising my grandma with flowers. He just forgot, because when we were in a different country beforehand, he carried everything, leaving me with just a backpack and travel suitcase, and he would carry the heavy suitcases. This conversation left me feeling so empty and upset because I genuinely love him and feel like he treats me well and is a man to me. I understand there's certain things that may seem like a gray area, but is there really a need to generalize him as an ill-mannered person and entitled? I'm stressed, y'all. I think really the problem here is they seem intent on dooming him, setting him up to fail from the get-go. So obviously with that mindset, what are they going to do? They're going to latch onto anything that they can use against them. I hate to necessarily bring it to politics, but it's kind of like how people are with politics, where if one candidate fumbles on a sentence, all of a sudden that is some serious ammo for that person to go, oh, see, this is exactly who they are, they're unfit. He didn't help out this one time with the suitcases? See, I told you he was a total jerk. Useful Tool 30 commented, taking only the info in your post into account, your boyfriend is a well-mannered person, and your parents continually look for excuses to badmouth him behind his back, which is far worse than anything he's ever done. If I was in your position, I'd be putting my foot down on their behavior, which, by the way, is extremely childish. You're all adults here. None of their critiques have any substance to them. They're petty opinions that have no substance to them. Our next story is, racist mom harasses me and my family at IHOP. I, 19-year-old female, along with my mom, 50-year-old female, and older sister, 22-year-old female, were eating at an IHOP at night. Lucky us, we were seated in a booth next to Karen, mid-40s, and her maybe 4-year-old son, with some other people dining with them who are not important. We got there at the tail end of their meal, but they were sitting and chatting as their waiter brought over the receipt. The entire time, the kid was peeking over the booth periodically and reaching out to grab my sister's or my hair. His hands were sticky with maple syrup, or bouncing so hard on the cushion that it shook our side. We didn't say anything, as it's generally not worth it to cause a scene to people who we thought were already leaving. We got our food and were taking pictures, as it was the Willy Wonka theme and we're prone to taking pictures of unique experiences. I got this sparkly hot chocolate and my mom and sister got this bucket of mimosas or some large alcoholic beverage to share. The family began to leave and we kind of sighed in relief. The kid, however, stayed around as Karen was the last to leave. He peeked over at our table and looked at our food and tried to touch it, which we quickly moved our food away from. He stopped trying to touch it and instead began to cough directly at us, onto our food and us. I could feel a splat of kid saliva on my hand. My mom had had enough at that point and looked at Karen and asked her to mind her kid. Karen replied, "He's not sick, he just has asthma." As if coughing on our food would be okay if he wasn't sick? Mom replied, "He's coughing on us, move him." The Karen replied, "He's not sick, it's not that big of a deal." Mom replied, "So you're okay if I spit on your food?" Karen replied, "How dare you?" And then Karen throws a cup she stole from another diner's table full of hot coffee at my mom. Luckily, it splashed onto the ground and didn't hurt anything, but my mom was livid at that point, and I had 911 dialed up and ready to go. My sister and I were periodically interjecting with curse words and defending our family. But my mom was already done with it. Karen stalked off with her kids shouting for us to go back to China, you slurs. Here, I shouted back that she should go back to whatever country she's 2% of, and that real Americans don't need you here. Karen screamed at a server that we assume she knew personally, that this is why COVID was so bad, because us slurs were bringing diseases. As she was stalking off, my mom got up, threw a fork at her back, and started to scream right back. I had 911 on call listening in and had the police come, giving the address of the IHOP, taking a picture of the Karen, everything I thought we might have needed. All the while, Karen was screaming that she had a child with her, and why would my mom be so violent and throwing more slurs and racist accusations at us? Like she didn't throw the first punch/cup of coffee? The Karen left. No one tried to stop her as the cops weren't there yet, other than my mom who was yelling that we would report her for this. We got moved to a different table and got some replacements for food. which none of us had really eaten yet. Unfortunately, we didn't get a replacement for the mimosas, even though that was by far the most expensive thing, because alcohol wasn't replaceable. My mom later complained about that too because the staff did nothing to stop her from harassing us, didn't contact the authorities on their own, and some even seemed to know her on a personal level. In the middle of our mostly replaced meal, the cops came and got our statement, to which my mom absolutely said press charges. Turns out it's not so easy and we're still in paperwork and reporting heck. But my mom is quite adamant in continuing on with it as she hates being treated like a second-class citizen, especially in front of her family. We're not going back to that IHOP anymore. This is definitely a crazy experience to have. To be fair, if I was working at that IHOP and this started going down, I don't know if I would have the reaction to just hop in there. It's not exactly Waffle House, but I've seen some videos of stuff going down in Waffle House, and I would know if I'm working at IHOP, I'm not getting paid enough to get in the middle of that. And sadly, I have zero confidence in the police doing anything about this. They're not going to invest any efforts or resources to go to track down this person, even despite the fact that she committed a hate crime. Bugs2024 commented, "I'm sorry you and your family had to go through this. The IHOP staff absolutely should have put a stop to the Karen's behavior and made her stay until the police arrived. Good for your mom for pressing charges. Maybe Karen and her family will learn a life lesson. Update when you can." Moody5583 commented, "Technically they can't. Their insurance would skyrocket if the employee got hurt trying to detain a hostile customer, but yes, the employee should have intervened when Karen started her crap." Our next story is, "My mother took out a $50,000 loan in my name without my knowledge." My mother has always been very bad with money, but she is a very good liar. When I was in my teens, my dad got really sick and couldn't work. That left my mother in charge of the finances. I'm an only child, so we never had really struggled for money, but when my dad got sick, we went from being upper middle class to lower middle class very quickly. My dad's medical treatments were insanely expensive. Suddenly, our electricity would be shut off randomly. I never knew if the water would be shut off or the internet and phones disconnected. We would get notices on the door of our home constantly. All this made me really nervous because I didn't understand what was happening. And every time I asked my mother what was going on, she would tell me everything was fine and it must have been a mistake by the utilities company. I trusted her, so I thought that was normal. When I was 17, I decided I wanted to pursue going to college. When I asked my mom about college, she told me that she was excited and that she and my dad had a college fund saved up that would pay for it. She told me that she and my dad were going to take care of everything. What that meant was taking out a $50,000 loan in my name when I was 17. I had no idea my mom did that, and I have no idea how she did that without my knowledge. I'm assuming she forged my signature at some point. So I went to college without ever knowing it was costing me money. I was in my second semester of my freshman year when I realized something was wrong with my mother. I got a call from MasterCard saying I'd missed my monthly payments for several months. Problem is, I didn't have a MasterCard. I didn't have any credit cards at all to my knowledge. When I called my mom crying to tell her that my identity had been stolen, she calmly said that she had some credit cards out in my name. Because she acted like that was a perfectly reasonable thing for a parent to do, I believed that it was. I trusted my mom. She told me she would take care of everything, but I would still get collections calls that I would have to beg my mother to take care of. So I struggled financially through all 4 years of college. At one point, she stopped paying for my student housing. So on top of going to school and working, I was constantly worried about being evicted. It was around the time I graduated that I realized my mother had taken out a huge student loan in my name. And by then, I was stuck with a degree that was never going to get me a job that would allow me to pay off a loan that big. At one point in my 20s, I had to move back in with my parents because my job was not covering my rent and student loan payments. During that 6-month period, my mom was served with court papers 3 different times. I would go to the door and someone from the court would ask for my mother and then hand her papers, saying, "You've been served." Every time it happened, she would not tell me what it was about and would just say, "It must be a mistake." My dad did eventually get better and he was able to work again. My dad now has a really good paying job, but they have a lot of medical debt and whatever other debt my mom has gotten herself into. I'm in my 30s and I now monitor my credit closely. Mostly because I worry about my mother committing identity theft. I have clear boundaries with her, but she still lies, and she has never apologized for getting me into the financial position I am in now. I do love her because I know she was just struggling to keep our family afloat, but she should have been honest about how poor we actually were. She should not have let me go to college thinking it was a financially sound decision, and she should not have used me and my credit like a bank. Now I never know who to trust or what is real. Is reality what I know it is? Or is reality what my mom says it is? I have a lot of respect for OP for still managing to say I do love her, understanding what at least they might have been trying to do, but it's still kind of shocking to hear because, well, it's just crazy what she did, let alone the lying and trying to pull the wool over your eyes your whole life, but really stealing thousands of dollars from you and setting you up to fail with your credit. OG Piscais commented, "There is no excuse for what your mother did. She committed a felony. She chose to ruin you. You struggled because of her. She broke your trust, and I wouldn't believe a word out of her mouth ever again." Our next story is, every day I become more disgusted at my entitled mom's fraudulent behavior towards me and how she never cared about me. It's been a long road, but I found out about my mother taking my inheritance back in 2022. It took me almost a year and a half to muster up the courage to have a lawyer send a demand letter to her. I knew it would mean that I would be homeless, but I did it anyways. As I suspected, she hired her own defense attorney, and her settlement offers and her defenses, the most prevalent is, "I can't pay you back, I don't have enough money," were ridiculous. I'm now about to file a lawsuit. She took mail that was meant for me, signed the documents I was supposed to fill out, complete with using her own work number as contact info, used a work colleague as a notary but post-subpoena, notary sent us proof that I was never present and never had my document notarized, used an invalid ID and another friend to sign off on a document that was meant for me, opened up a bank account in my name so she could cash the check and have access to it without me knowing. I only found out about this bank account a few months ago, as she used this as a defense that I should have known about this account. I visited the bank and received statements and was told to create an online account. Not one transaction is under my name. In fact, online, it shows that I haven't even activated a card. Statements show that my mother transferred 99% of this bank's account's money into her own personal bank account shortly after I confronted her about taking my inheritance. Created a trust fund with a now disbarred attorney where I'm a beneficiary, but I never even knew about this trust until I did snooping 2 years ago. Via Property Shark, had 3 properties under the trust where I am the beneficiary that she sold after my dad had passed away, asked me for money while I was going to school and working 2 part-time jobs with no car, asked me for unemployment money when she was making money at her job and getting unemployment benefits herself, always asked me to help her since she's now a mom and a dad. Even after I confronted her about the money, she tried making me sign documents waiving my right to sue. I didn't sign, tried to get me to not involve lawyers, and still had total control over my money, tried to convince me that she would be homeless if I got my money. I am just completely overwhelmed at how disgustingly selfish someone could be. I could type out for hours the disgusting excuses she's come up with to justify that she deserves that money and I don't. How could she look me in the eyes and try guilting me when she had access to several properties and hundreds of thousands of dollars after my father passed away? I'm also so ticked at myself for taking this long to file a lawsuit. I'm so ticked at myself for taking this long to begin undoing the negative inner voice she has implanted in my head. I was always lost and never received guidance from her. All I ever got was ridicule from her for not having all my crap together and making money. I'm just praying that I end up discovering a lot of good things for my case once I file. Judging on her history of unbelievably egregious lies, I wouldn't be surprised if she's hiding more money. Perhaps I should also go to my local county clerk to see if my father left an official will. Considering every shady thing she did, I think it is of the utmost importance that OP goes and checks for that will. It'll be very satisfying for them to be investigated to the fullest extent and to be able to understand just what's going on. McDuchess commented, "Police report, she defrauded you, forged your name on multiple documents and brought other people who are also criminal in their behavior into her scheme. She won't be homeless if she's in prison. but she may have to sell her house to pay you whatever she can if what she stole from you. My son had 4 $50 savings bonds that he had received from his godparents over the years. I was laid off twice from 2 different small companies. There were more than a few times that an extra $200 or so would have made my life easier, but it wasn't my freaking money. I'm not a saint by any means, but there are laws that even minimally decent people don't cross. Stealing from their kids is way near the top of the list. I'm so sorry that your mother is a POS. May she get what's due for her crimes. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy entitled parent story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.